All right, so kata, we're in book 5 of the DBG. We're in the chapters of debate after Ambiorix has obviously indicated that if the Romans would like, they have safe passage according to him. Kata and a lot of the tribunes and centurions say, let's stay. Caesar ain't tell us to leave, we ain't leaving. I don't care what he has said about some Germans showing up. Sabinus, on the other hand, has said, leave, leave, leave. Leave, it's good. Leave, it's bad. Leave, just leave. So we continue in chapter 30. Hac disputatione habitat, Abbot of Absolute. With this disagreement having been held into each part, i.e. A, leave, B, go, when it was resisted, again, Caesar loves that impersonal passive, by Kata, and by the first ranks sharply, Kata saying, no, 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 we are not leaving this camp. All of the guys who are the head of the armies and the people in the trenches, the centurion, no, 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 we are not leaving. Sabinus says, fine, whatever. That's essentially what he does. Win, Kate. Win. If y'all want in such a way. This is essentially during the argument that you're having with somebody when they say, fine, whatever. That's exactly what it is. Sabinus says, win, if y'all want in such a way. And he speaks, he says, this, because of from, in, on, out, in a more loud voice, a more clear voice, so that, purpose clause, with a subjunctive verb, exaudere, so that a large part of the soldiers would hear. So he starts speaking loudly so that the soldiers themselves can hear what he is saying. He's being very passive-aggressive. I think we've seen these things before in our own lives. He says, I am not he. I am not the guy. This is from Issei Id. I am not the guy who. Now, how many who's are there? 6. I who, you who, he who, we who, y'all who, they who. And here it is an I who, because he says, I am not the guy who is terrified most gravely out of y'all by the fear of death. He's telling him, look, I'm not making my decision because I'm scared of dying. So I am not the guy who am terrified passively by the fear of death most seriously out of y'all. These guys, and he's referring to the soldiers, and he's speaking up so that they can hear intentionally. They will be wise. Remember, sapiens, that we are Homo sapiens, the wise human, unlike Homo erectus or Homo habilis. If something, si nisi numine, all those ollies fall away, more serious happens. So what we have here is a future more vivid. In the C clause, you will either have a future or a future perfect. And in the then clause, you will have a future. That E of reposco reposcere. And it is a real condition of the future. Tomorrow, if I verb tomorrow, then another subject will verb tomorrow. So, if something more serious happens, they will demand, posco poscere, a rationale from you. They who, these guys, the soldiers, will demand, they want to know, why did you make that decision? These guys who, if, now you have a subjunctive with the if clause, it should, would, if it should be allowed through y'all. These guys who, on the following day, perendino die, that means on the day after tomorrow, on the following day, with the nearest camps having been joined together, not the camps having been joined together, but they, the who, having been joined together with the nearest camps on the day after tomorrow, if it should be allowed through you, they would sustain the common downfall of war with the rest. He's saying, give the men a fighting chance. If they've got to go down fighting, at least let them go down fighting, having been joined with the nearest camps on the day after tomorrow. They sustain. would sustain, should sustain, might sustain, would sustain. That common downfall. Don't let them die alone. Not, and that's what he says, having been rejected and having been separated longly from the rest, not let them die, eo-ire, with a prefix like perire, to perish, ob-ire, an obituary, not let them die either by iron or by hunger. His point is this: let us go down swinging. And so he says it again. These guys will be wise. If something more serious happens, they will demand an accounting from you. These guys who, if it should be allowed through you, who would sustain the common catastrophe of war with the remainders, having been joined up, having been joined up with the nearest camps on the day after tomorrow, not who rejected and separated longly from the rest, would not die, or let them not die, either by iron or by hunger. So his point is this: at least let us go and die, if we're going to, with our fellow men in these other camps. In other words, just let us go. And so finally we get to the end of the arguments in chapter 31. It is risen. Again, Caesar loves the impersonal passive. It is risen from the plan. In other words, they all stand up from the table. They're coming to a final decision. They understand, they comprehend each one, meaning like option A or option B, and they beg, ora orare, that, this is a commanding word, so this is a indirect command. They beg that they not lead the situation into the greatest danger by their own disagreement and stubbornness, by their own dissension and pertinacity, stubbornness. They understand that the situation is easy. Now it's not, but it is, because there are only two options. And that's what we then say. Seu, seu. Whether or. Whether they should stay or whether they should set out. Just like I said, that song from The Clash. Should I stay or should I go? So that the situation is easy. They understand it. Whether they should stay or whether they should set out. If only all could feel and approve one thing. So regardless of the decision, everybody has to be on the same page. Even if you disagreed with it previously. Got to be on the same page. Give you an example. I've watched recently this documentary over Lewis and Clark. They came to a point in the Missouri River which they did not know which way to go. It had split in two. And the men wanted to go in one direction, and Lewis and Clark, the commanders, wanted to go with another. And Lewis and Clark made the final decision. And the men who were in the Corps Discovery, even though they thought that it was the wrong way, they accepted that and will put everything into going along with the decision that Lewis and Clark made, and they made the right one. Same thing here. They might disagree, but everybody needs to be on board once the decision is made. Nevertheless, they understand that they saw, spicio spicere, no safety in dissension. And that means contra. And contrarily, against this, in other words, people not being on the same page after the fact, that they saw no safety in disagreement. The situation, the res, is let out in disagreement, because I'm from in on at, to the middle night. And at last, kata, having been moved, is a first declension masculine, gives his hands. He gives up. To give your hands is to shrug your shoulder and say, fine, you win. The opinion, the sententia of Sabinus overcomes. Supero superare. It is announced nuntio, nuntiare. This is not a subjunctive because that's the stem, and that's your regular indicative vowel, and it's passive. So it is announced that ituros esse, that they will go at first light. The remaining part, reliqua pars, of the night is consumed with night watches. That's what the wigilis are. And when each soldier, quisque means each. In other words, quisquid, all that with a qui, each. And when each soldier was looking around at his own stuff, what he was able to carry with him. It's kind of like being woken up in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. and saying, you have 1 hour, pack a suitcase, we're going. You can't bring everything in your whole life and room. You've got to make a decision as to what you bring with you and what you don't. And that's what it is for these soldiers. You can imagine the stress, the anxiety, just the utter fear and panic, like you being woken up in the middle of the night. So the remainder of the night is consumed with night watches. And when each soldier looked around at his own stuff, at what he was able to carry with him, and what out of the equipment, out of the instruments of the winter camps, he was compelled to leave behind. You got to make a decision of what you leave behind, what you go take with you. All things are considered, just like on NPR, all things considered. Every aspect. You look around your room. Of course, you can take your cell phone, but are you going to take this? Are you going to take that? What about your pillows? Is there really room for it? You don't even know where you're going necessarily. All you know that it is in a hurry. It is in a rush. All things are considered. Quare. Wherefore. Wherefore is a fancy English word that means why. Why? It should be stayed, not without danger. This is a litotes. In other words, they are wanting to know, the Roman soldiers themselves, like, why can't we stay here? What is the danger? The utter fear of the unknown. Why it could be stayed, not without danger, and why the danger would increase, algeo algere, by the languor, by the sluggishness and the watches of the soldiers. In other words, all of them are thinking, why we got to leave? And then secondly, why would the danger increase with just staying put and with the watches of the soldiers? They want to know, why are we leaving? Like, is it any more dangerous if we're watching every night along the borders of the camp? These are the things that they are wondering, kind of like you would ask first thing when your parents wake you up at 4 in the morning. We leave them 1 hour, pack a suitcase. First question, why? What's going on? They're not going to tell you. They're too busy trying to make sure that everybody in the household is ready to go. That is Sabinus and Kata. But of course, you would be terrified. Your mind would be racing. Same thing for these soldiers. So do we get in? All things are thought about. Why it should be stayed, not without danger. And why the danger would increase subjunctively by the languidness, by the inaction and the watches of the soldiers. They set out at first light from the camps in such a way, seek is one of those degree words that introduces an ut clause that is a result. That as a result, it had been persuaded, persuasum plus esset, taking off the T, it would just be a perfect passive infinitive. Once you take and add that T, then you make a pluperfect verb, subjunctive. In such a way they set out that it had been persuaded to them that the plan, datum esse, had been given not by the enemy, Ambiorix, but by the most friendly man, Ambiorix. The point is this. Ambiorix had been at one point a very friendly man. He was the personal concierge. And that's the spin. That's the angle that the soldiers are given. by their commanders. We're leaving because our ally, Ambiorix, our friend Ambiorix, has given us this intelligence, this information. Not the Ambiorix that tried to kill us yesterday. They put a spin on it. They put an angle on it. And they set out in such a way that it had been persuaded to them that the plan had been given not by the enemy, but by the very friendly man, Ambiorix. And they set out longissimo agmene, in a very long battle line, and with very large maximis baggage trains. Remember, the impedimenta is the baggage train. And this is going to be important because, man, oh man, a very long battle line, not good. Very big baggage train. They are not moving like Caesar likes. How does Caesar like to move? Lean and mean. They are moving fat and sluggish. And we will see in the next chapter. Does not bode well. Chapter 32 upcoming.